Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we've got a Chinese ultimatum to the United States. Don't default. Don't go bankrupt. Good advice. What a tragedy that the U.S. has to get this advice. But it also spurs us, if you don't want to be taking orders in the future, you better get your economic recovery program going. And it's not the free market, and it's not an immediate deflationary crash the way every Austrian wants to have it. And you better build that infrastructure. And if the private sector hasn't built it, which they have not, it better be a Works Progress Administration, Public Works Administration program. Economic crisis getting worse. Dow now crashing below 1,200 after, I guess we're now in 6 weeks of constant decline of the stock market, which is the way that this becomes a political issue. The NASDAQ now negative for the year. We'll be back to this in a minute. China is building an aircraft carrier. The U.S. is cutting back. NATO is running out of bombs. Get the idea? And when you reach the point where your logistics collapse, the temptation to go nuclear. How do you go nuclear in this world? You do it with a false flag. So that is more than likely. In Libya, first of all, Panetta complains that Gaddafi's resistance is blocking the entire U.S. program of the Arab Spring. The entire wave of destabilizations, coups, and puppet governments is being blocked by Gaddafi. You can see their hysterical devotion to overthrowing Gaddafi or eliminating him by any means possible. They've been trying again this week to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi. No success so far. Rather, we've got a U.S. mission, which is now the U.S. embassy to Libya has now been moved to Washington, D.C. Interesting article in the Washington Post of today, Friday, June 10th, where they go through the fact that the Libyan embassy, the U.S. embassy in Tripoli, is now located here in Washington at DuPont Circle. However, one interesting thing, the leaders of the rebellion were trained by the U.S. embassy, and here's how the Washington Post delicately puts it. Familiar faces. As the U.S. government struggles to understand who the Libyan rebels are, the diplomats recognize some surprising old contacts. Hey, what a surprise. A number of opposition leaders, it turned out, had participated in the U.S. Embassy's archaeology, education, and commercial law program, and some of their children were at the space camp aimed at children. The public affairs section knew them best. These are the leaders of the Benghazi Rebel Council, says Natalie A. Baker, the political officer of what had been the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli. It's been really interesting to see how our embassy has evolved. Yeah, you were recruiting, you were subverting and suborning agents to try to do a coup against Gaddafi, and that is what the Washington Post has revealed here. So Gaddafi blocks the Arab Spring. He's stopping all those wonderful reforms. There's been a meeting of the contact group on Libya, and they provide upwards of $1 billion. They promise. Who knows what they'll do? They're promising more than $1 billion to the rebel council there in Benghazi, including the Darna branch and the triumvirate of terror of Hasidi, Kumi, and Barani, including Guantanamo Bay veterans and former U.S. prisoners of war captured killing GIs in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're now going to get $1 billion. I wonder if one could invoke the law against giving material aid to terrorism. In other words, if you give money and it goes to Al-Qaeda, dear Hillary Clinton, then isn't that somehow implicating you in supporting terrorism? So Hillary has now essentially said, Madame Clinton, that the Benghazi so-called Transitional National Council, the TNC as they call them, that's now the government of Libya, and they are attempting to convoy various kinds of resources to these characters. The Viagra story, that the Gaddafi troops use Viagra and then go on orgies of rape. Source of this Susan Rice, and I suppose we have to take this seriously. Susan Rice's expertise in the area of aphrodisiacs is known to be quite extensive, and she has, in particular, aphrodisiacs as applied to leaders of African states. That seems to be one of her points of particular expertise. So this is now the situation in Libya as it looks. It is a stalemate. We have here Anne Applebaum in the Tuesday Washington Post. Anne Applebaum, of course, is the wife of the Polish foreign minister, Sikorski. So she gets from him what's going on in the various European NATO meetings. And the story is that what Hillary has been saying and what Obama has been saying is that there's a stalemate in Libya for the moment. They're perfectly happy with it. Maybe they're not. But as far as the chaos goes, that they're happy with. That eventually Gaddafi will be overthrown. The rebels can claim victory. NATO will disappear. In Europe last week, President Obama told his counterparts that this is his plan. He even urged officials not in the coalition to join it. They should join it so that they'll be on the right side of things when the Gaddafi regime collapses. Now, that's a way of saying that they like chaos. They do like chaos, so they can have chaos. Libya descends into chaos, and then you simply carve out the enclaves that you want where the oil is and ignore the rest. Let that go into warlords and tribalism, chaos, criminal enterprises, drug smuggling, and all the rest. On the other hand, though, the prestige of Sarkozy, Cameron, and Obama now comes into play in their various coteries, and it is likely that that some form of more extreme approach is going to be used. All the more so because the political resistance to this somehow is becoming more visible, at least. Congressman Kucinich tried to bring an end to the Libyan adventure. He has not succeeded. However, by the time we reach the 20th of June, mark your calendar, the 20th of June, Obama is impeachment bait. If the U.S. is still bombing Libya as of the 20th of June, Obama must be impeached because he's then violating the War Powers Act. What kind of a Democratic president flagrantly violates the War Powers Act? Notice the hypocrisy of Obama. Obama doesn't talk about drone attacks in Pakistan, pretends they're not going on. But above all, he's silent about Libya. He hasn't said a word about Libya in public for months. It doesn't exist. So he thinks that he can simply put his smiling face on television and you're going to ignore the bloody hands that are not maybe shown in the shot. Now, we've had Senator Lugar writing an op-ed critical of the policy, Lugar fighting for his political life against Tea Party fanatics in Indiana next year. He may have to do something because Tea Party guys don't want to spend money on Libya. This is one useful thing that they can do. And now we have the Webb-Corker amendment, James Webb and Corker, and they want Obama to come to Congress and get a resolution and explain what it is he's doing, what's the goal, what's the exit plan, and all the obvious things. So they're prodding Obama to do something about this. So this kind of opposition is there. Now, whether that will amount to anything is anybody's guess. It is certainly possible that the Libyan question can become a proxy for other issues. For example, if Wall Street beats the Republicans over the head and says, you lunatics, pass that debt ceiling or you're going to have a panic, maybe the reactionary Republicans will use the Libyan issue to hit Obama and use that to go to their base and say, well, it's not true that we simply capitulated to Obama on everything. We got Obama out of Libya. The other thing, of course, is the logistical breakdown that could be going on. In other words, there are many reasons for Gaddafi to hang on, given this disarray. The fact that NATO is running out of bombs. Now, we're going to get back and do Syria and Yemen in just a minute.